That was the most terrifying night of my life. My name is Daniel, and I work overnight at a small, family-owned motel. My hours are 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The place is tiny, so I spend most nights in the back office, the lounge with a TV and a couch. The best part is the bell speaker in the back that alerts me when someone rings the front counter. I know the sounds of the old building well. The heater clicks, the building creaks. But sometimes, those familiar sounds turn into something else. It was 2 a.m. on a cold fall night. The parking lot was empty. Then, the front desk bell rang. I got up, went to the lobby. Empty. I checked the glass doors, no headlights, no movement. I convinced myself I was imagining it and returned to the back office. Not 10 minutes later, the bell rang again. I rushed out. Still empty. This time, a knot of panic formed in my stomach. I went outside, checked the whole lot, and looked up and down the empty road. Nothing. I decided to sit behind the front desk this time. I figured if someone was playing a prank, I'd catch them. I lowered the lobby lights and stared at the counter bell. The silence was intense. The ticking clock and the fridge hum sounded deafening. I sat there, tense, for 20 minutes. My eyes were getting heavy, and I started to relax, thinking the prankster had given up. Just as I started to doze, the bell rang again. But this time, I saw it. A pale, bony hand shot up from beneath the front desk and calmly pressed the counter bell right in front of me. I screamed, throwing myself backwards, and scrambled down the hall. I bolted into the back office, slammed the door, and locked it. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Someone was hidden inches away from me, waiting in the tiny space under the counter. I forced myself to look at the security monitors. The lobby chair was tipped over. Then, in the bottom corner of the feed, I saw movement. A head poked out from behind the desk, and I saw the glint of eyes staring right into the lens. I backed away from the screen, my hands shaking as I dialed 911. While whispering to the dispatcher, I watched the monitor. The person crawled out, got to their feet, tall, hunched, wearing a tight hoodie, and slowly walked toward my door. I pressed my back against the locked door. A moment later, I heard it. The knob rattled, slow and deliberate. Once, then nothing. I couldn't even answer the dispatcher. Finally, slow footsteps moved away. I rushed back to the screen. The man was pacing the lobby, then stood by the glass doors, staring out, waiting. He even stopped to flip through a brochure rack, as if killing time. Then I saw it. Flashing red and blue lights, pulling into the parking lot on the camera feed. The man immediately darted out of frame. The officers cleared the building. They found a large rock propping the front door open. But the man was gone. He had slipped away the second they arrived. The officers said he must have run as soon as he saw their lights. But I can never forget that pale hand reaching up from the darkness to press the bell. So calm, so close. Now, every ding of that bell brings back that moment. I can never look at that desk the same way again. This is a true story about the most terrifying night of my life. But the worst part isn't what the intruder did. The worst part is that he was inside the building for over 4 hours, and I'm the one who let him in. Working night security at a small 3-floor hotel was the easiest job I ever had. It was dead silent from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The lobby locks automatically, so guests just buzz, and I let them in. This happened last year, but the details still make my blood run cold because of how long he was inside before I realized he wasn't a guest. At 11 p.m., a man rang the buzzer. He was mid-40s, tall, wearing a cap, and carrying a backpack. I let him in. He asked for a room. I ran his card, and everything seemed normal. I gave him the key card for room 214. The transaction was over, but he didn't move. He just stood there, his eyes locked on mine with a completely empty, unsettling expression. It was 4 seconds of pure, motionless staring. Finally, he turned and walked toward the elevator. Around midnight, I saw him again. He was back in the lobby, not at the desk, but sitting in the corner lounge. The television was off, but he was staring at the blank screen. He didn't check his phone, he didn't read. He just sat, unmoving, for half an hour. When I got up to use the vending machine, I could feel him slowly turn his head. His eyes were heavy on me until I was safely back behind the glass. At 1 a.m., I got curious and checked the computer system. I pulled up the list of occupied rooms. Room 214 was empty. I checked the transaction history. No payment record. I checked the electronic log for the door. The room had never been opened. He had faked the entire check-in. He wasn't a guest. He was already inside. My heart began to hammer. He was still sitting there. I walked over, my hands shaking. I forced myself to ask if everything was okay. He looked up, totally expressionless, and simply whispered, "I just can't sleep." He immediately turned back to the blank screen. I retreated to the desk, scared stiff. At 2 a.m., the lounge was suddenly empty. My stomach dropped. I scanned the area and spotted him standing at the far, dark end of the main hallway, completely still. He stood for several minutes, then drifted back and sat on the couch again. I called my manager, who just told me to call the police if he did anything threatening. I felt like he already was. I started watching the security cameras. I watched him on the first floor camera, walking the hall, stopping, then walking back. Then he went into the stairwell and stayed there for 10 minutes, doing God knows what. Every time I looked up, he was in a new spot, by the machines, near the elevator, or just standing in the shadows near the lobby corner. He was always watching. By 3:30, I made a non-emergency call. While I waited, he moved to stand closer to the counter, maybe 15 feet away. He just stared, without a blink. Then, at 3:50, another guest arrived. I let him in. The man turned his head and tracked the arriving guest all the way across the lobby. He wasn't just observing me. He was studying the other guests. Moments later, I saw him on the camera again. He was standing right outside a guest room door on the first floor. I didn't hesitate. I called 911 immediately. He just stood there for 3 minutes, then slowly walked back. He approached the desk one last time, leaned close, and asked in that same low, disturbing voice, "Is there any food?" I pointed to the vending machines. He smiled a small, chilling smile and walked away. 2 officers showed up at 4:10. I pointed him out. They questioned him and walked him out. The officer confirmed, stolen credit card, no bags, no reservation. He had used the fake check-in just to get inside. I sat there shaking until dawn. The fact that he was in the building for hours, wandering and lurking outside rooms, was horrifying. I know he had a plan, and I know it was terrible.